Picture a tanker the length of 4 city blocks drawing 14 meters of water, threading a channel barely 12 meters deep at low tide. Around it, 580 coral reefs, tidal currents hitting 7 knots, and a maze of shoals that have claimed ships for centuries. This is the Torres Strait, 90 miles of water between Australia and Papua New Guinea. Every year, thousands of vessels carrying Australia's coal gas and ore to Asia must pass through here, and the rules governing that passage are unlike any other shipping lane on Earth. The Torres Strait sits at the top of Australia's Cape York Peninsula, separating the Coral Sea to the east from the Arafura Sea to the west. It is roughly 150 kilometers wide, but most of that width is impassable. The navigable corridor squeezes ships through water that is, in places, barely deeper than the vessels using it. 274 islands and 580 coral reefs covering 400 square kilometers, with tides running from opposite ends simultaneously, creating currents that can hit 7 knots. Torres Strait Islanders, a distinct indigenous people who have navigated these waters for millennia, call the sea between the islands their country, not a shipping lane. The alternative for ships moving between the Pacific and the Indian Ocean is to swing around the bottom of Australia, adding days and thousands of dollars per voyage. Torres Strait is the shortcut, and the shortcut runs through one of the most ecologically sensitive environments on the planet. Carried the northern edge of the Great Barrier Reef, more than 11,000 shipping movements transit the combined Great Barrier Reef and Torres Strait corridor every year, according to the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. Bulk carriers and tankers make up the dominant traffic. Coal heading north from Gladstone and Dalrymple Bay, liquefied natural gas from Curtis Island, iron ore from the north. Australia is the world's largest iron ore producer, the second largest exporter of thermal coal, and one of the top 3 LNG exporters globally. Much of that cargo bound for China, Japan, Korea, and the wider Indo-Pacific passes through or alongside this corridor. China alone absorbs roughly 32% of Australia's total merchandise exports, approximately $12 billion in 2023-24, primarily iron ore, LNG, and coal. The vessels carrying that trade are exactly the class of ship, over 70 meters in length, or carrying oil, chemicals, or liquefied gas, that Australian law requires to carry a licensed pilot aboard from the moment they enter these waters. That requirement is not a suggestion. Compulsory pilotage in the Great Barrier Reef has been in force since 1991. In 2005, following a joint submission by Australia and Papua New Guinea to the International Maritime Organization, the Torres Strait was formally extended into the Great Barrier Reef's particularly sensitive sea area, the first such designation ever granted anywhere in the world. With that designation came the legal obligation: any qualifying vessel transiting the strait must embark a Torres Strait pilot at a designated boarding point. The pilots, a small cadre of highly specialized navigators, bring local knowledge the ship's captain simply does not have. They know where the uncharted rocks hide, how the current behaves on a specific tide, which channel to use on which draft. The justification for the system was written in oil. On March 3, 1970, the tanker Oceanic Grandeur struck an uncharted rock in Torres Strait, carrying 55,000 tons of Sumatran crude. 8 of 15 cargo tanks ruptured. The spill, estimated at around 100 tons, dispersed on 6 knot currents that made containment effectively impossible. It was Australia's first major marine oil spill, and the government was wholly unprepared. The incident directly triggered the creation of Australia's National Plan for Marine Environmental Emergencies. The lesson was clear in these waters: a single navigational error cascades into an ecological catastrophe you cannot clean up. But compulsory pilotage in an international strait creates a legal problem that remains unresolved. Under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, all ships have the right of transit passage through straits used for international navigation. UNCLOS is explicit. States bordering a strait cannot require ships to comply with compulsory pilotage. When Australia extended pilotage to Torres Strait in 2006, maritime states including the United States lodged formal objections, arguing the rules conflicted with transit passage rights. Australia holds that environmental protection obligations override that principle. Critics warn it sets a precedent any coastal state could exploit. The dispute has never been adjudicated. In practice, ships comply because in these waters, the consequences of not complying are obvious, and because AMSA has real enforcement powers. The legal tension acquired a sharper strategic dimension in February 2025. Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy Task Group, a Type Do 55 cruiser, a Type Do 44A frigate, and a replenishment ship, transited the Torres Strait before conducting LEV fire exercises in Australia's economic zone and circumnavigating the continent. Warships are exempt from pilotage rules. They exercise their right of transit passage. But the message was clear. China considers this an international waterway and will use it. Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles lodged a diplomatic complaint, not about the transit itself, which Canberra acknowledged as lawful, but about the absence of prior notice for the subsequent LEV fire drill. The corridor was no longer just a commercial choke point. It was a demonstration of reach. The strait faces a second, slower-moving threat. Sea levels here are rising at roughly twice the global average, 6 to 8 millimeters per year. The islands most at risk, Boigu and Sabai in the west, sit less than 2 meters above sea level and are already flooded during king tides. Assume 0.8 meters of additional rise by 2100. In 2022, the United Nations Human Rights Committee found Australia had violated Torres Strait Islanders' rights by failing to adequately protect their way of life from climate change. The communities watching these tankers pass are not just at risk from the ships. They are at risk from what those ships are carrying. Close the Torres Strait and the calculus changes fast. Ships lose the shortest route between the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. Australia's coal, gas, and ore cargoes face longer transits and higher freight costs. Japanese and Korean power plants that depend on Australian LNG and have limited alternative supply start calculating reserve days. The coral ecosystem of the northern Great Barrier Reef, already stressed by warming water, faces no more tankers, but also no more pilots to prevent the grounding that could release 55,000 tons of crude into one of the last healthy reef systems on Earth. The Torres Strait is 90 miles of shallow water, where the world's most important trading routes, one of the planet's richest marine environments, a sovereign nation's legal authority, and the existential arithmetic of small island communities all converge on the same piece of ocean. It is a strait where the pilot boarding the ship is not a bureaucratic inconvenience. It is the only thing standing between a fully laden tanker and the reef. And right now, the reef is the only thing that's still winning.